Hello everybody, welcome back to another Commander Top 10 video. This time we're going to be talking about my picks for the 10 best Clerics in the Commander format. This list is up to date with Zendikar Rising, so I think it's important that we go over a lot of the Clerics since we have Cleric synergies. It might help out some people if they wanted to go for Cleric Tribal. Clerics are pretty cool. I think for a while people have wanted to make a very strong Commander deck with them, but you didn't quite have the teeth. Now, of course, these are just my picks for the 10 best. I'm not just looking at power, I'm looking at synergy, I'm looking at strategy and flavor, because those are things that I tend to value in Commander. Number 10 is a pretty narrow strategy, but we have it with Shadowborne Apostle. You can have any number of Shadowborne Apostles in your deck, and once you have 6 of them out there, you can sacrifice them to pretty much cheat into play a demon creature. So the whole deck should pretty much be like 40 Shadowborne Apostles and like 15 to 20 really powerful demons. That way you're pretty much guaranteed to have a bunch of demons that you can put into play. They're going to serve their purpose. And there are other strategies too that you can abuse Shadowborne Apostle with. You can put them behind a commander like Athreos God of Passage, so it can make it very easy to get them back. And of course, in just Cleric decks in general, with some of the newer synergies, it'll be a little bit easier to get them back, sacrifice them, and then search up some demons. I had to put it on the list because, you know, a strategy like this, it's so unique to Commander, but it's definitely not the strongest you can do with Clerics. Number 9 is Kaalia of the Vast, one of the most intimidating Commander options in the history of the Commander format. Outside of just simply being a Cleric, she doesn't really do anything for the tribe, but that's just more a testament to her power as a commander. One of the most bizarre decks if you had to ask anybody, because it's pretty much like a 3-way tribal deck, where your whole focus is just trying to cheat into play the best demons, dragons, and angels. I think she more than deserves a spot on this list. This wasn't just about the best Cleric tribal cards, but cards that were Clerics that just happened to be amazing in Commander. I think Kaalia of the Vast definitely deserves to be on here. Number 8 is Suture Priest. Now, there's a ton of Soul Warden abilities. I have to go with one, and I'm going to go with Suture Priest because I think it just does enough. Whereas those cards can gain you a ton of life, counting your opponent's creatures entering the battlefield. I think Suture Priest just puts in way more work. It can really stop combos, infinite combos. Let's say if your opponents have a Deadeye Navigator, they may not want to go infinite with something like a Peregrine Drake. They're going to lose a life each time a creature enters the battlefield under their control. And at the common level, I mean, a lot of these cards are just really good in Commander. Whether you're playing Clerics or life gain, whatever. Suture Priest has always been a pretty good card. Number 7 is Timeweaver. Now we're going for another pretty good Commander option. I think Timeweaver, to go along with Commander 2016, it's more a testament to the partner mechanic and how powerful that can be. She does offer you some decent value in card draw for the cost of life. If you want to play a bit more competitively, we of course have the Breakfast Talk decks in competitive EDH with Thrasios. You could also partner up with Bruce Tarl if you wanted to make more of a pure life gain deck. Or partner up with Ravos Soul Tender so you could actually make a Cleric Tribal deck before Zendikar Rising, which is what I did. Seeing as you have 2 Commander options that were both Clerics, it made it a little bit easier to play that deck. Overall, nothing super powerful on her own, but when you can just consistently attack, pay a little bit of life, draw some cards, if you can just do that every turn, that's just going to add to the consistency of your deck. Number 6 is Mikaeus the Unhallowed, one of the deadliest cards on this list. We can talk about the combos with cards like Triskelion, Walking Ballista, and how ridiculous it is to have something come back with counters that you can continuously ping your opponents with. But I think on its own, even if you take away the combos, you have one of the overall best Clerics in the Commander format, as well as one of the best zombies. All of your non-human creatures gaining Undying. You also have some decent synergies outside of those combos, like with Marchesa the Black Rose. It's always nice if you have a backup plan in your reanimation strategies, and it always seems like if you were struggling maintaining your board presence, having a card like Mikaeus the Unhallowed meant that you could have those creatures come back, and you didn't really have to be that afraid of removal. So it's just a fantastic card, one of my favorite black creatures in Commander. And then number 5, we have Selfless Spirit. This card has been an absolute pain to deal with for many decks. And it plays into a common theme you're going to notice with Clerics is that they're protective. They can offer protection. Sometimes they can prevent combat damage. Sometimes they can prevent your opponents from simply doing anything on your turn. Selfless Spirit, you can sacrifice it to give all of your other creatures indestructible until end of turn, which is already pretty deadly. You would think that by sacrificing it, okay, it's a one-time use, but in Commander where you have so many easy ways of bringing something like this back, if you know why Spore Frog is incredibly annoying for decks that can bring it back, Selfless Spirit, while I wouldn't say it's that annoying, it can really help you nullify the majority of removal in the format, seeing as red, green, and black tend to have a majority of removal that just says destroy. The only thing you really have to fear is sacrifice, -1/-1 counters, and exiling. So bring it back over and over again, keep sacrificing it, your team is going to be indestructible. Valuable for Cleric strategies because now you have more of a graveyard synergy. You have some pretty good cards coming out in Zendikar Rising, so something like this is going to be even more powerful. But you can throw it into just about any deck. It's not just because it's a Cleric. It's a pretty good card. Number 4 is Yagmoth, Tharn Physician. This card is ridiculous. This card is insanely powerful, and it can go into just about any black deck, as well as any Cleric deck. You get a multi-purpose sack outlet where you can sacrifice a creature, put a -1/-1 counter on up to one target creature, and then draw a card. You can also fool around with Proliferate if you want to add more of those -1/-1 counters, or you can add more loyalty counters to your Planeswalkers. It is that ridiculous. It's arguably strongest as a commander, where you could take advantage of a ton of creatures that'll come back over and over again, like reassembling Skeleton. You can sacrifice a Bloodghast. If you can keep sacrificing creatures, you have an engine where you can keep drawing cards as well. I would say whatever Mikaeus the Unhollow did for black, Yagmoth, Tharn Physician, took it up to 11. I mean, it's that good. It's quite possibly all around the best black commander option, I think, right now. Or just the best black creature, synergizing with so much in black. I don't know if we've ever had a creature like this before. I mean, we've had some good abilities in black, but to have this much on one creature, it's quite absurd. Number 3 is Grand Abolisher. Now, if you've been playing White in Commander for a long time, you'll know Grand Abolisher well. It has really been White's way of competing. A lot of what the color can do well is establish a board presence through numbers, and if you have some life gain strategies too, you have that, but it's otherwise very easy to interrupt. So having something that can pretty much stop your opponents from stopping your combos, stopping your attacks, removing your creatures before you attack or whatever, it's so important. It's something that you don't see really anywhere else. I mean, we have other cards that do similar things, but I don't think it's quite as flexible as Grand Abolisher. And add on to that the fact that it's also been one of the better Clerics, and here it is, number 3 on my list. But it really just takes into account pretty much anything your opponents can do. They can't cast instants like Cyclonic Rift. They can't cast anything to remove your artifacts or enchantments. They can't do anything to really mess with your turn. So if you are playing a combo deck, Grand Abolisher is definitely worth the 2 mana you pay for it. And that's just what you're going to see towards the top. It's just crazy flexibility and something that can fit into just about every deck. Number 2 is kind of the same idea, Mother of Runes, but this time for just 1 mana, you have a creature that can tap to give a target creature protection from any color until end of turn. So yes, it's not going to shut down your opponents if you need to combo off on your turn, but it is a bit more flexible and probably more useful for more decks, because if you are focusing on a commander strategy that is centered around your commander in order to function, you may want to have the most protection for your commander. Mother of Runes has always been that creature for me. In many white decks, it's been an auto-include next to Lightning Greaves. It's just really found its home in Commander, and it's just funny to explain to people how this joke card, I mean, everybody calls her mom, you know, Martha Stewart even, but she really is just an effective all-around card. She's better than the newer card Giver of Runes because she can give herself protection, so if you have nothing else, you can at least throw her out there. If your opponents want to target her, you can just give her protection until end of turn. So she's pretty effective, I would say one of the better turn 1 plays. So for honorable mentions, I know I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time around. I usually do my honorable mentions before the list, but I think it actually makes it better to save it for the end, right before I do number 1. We have Edgewalker, which I think is a pretty decent cleric tribal card, giving cost reduction for black-white clerics, which is the majority of clerics. Just helps to speed up what could otherwise be a slower strategy, and since a lot of clerics can be pretty cheap, you're going to throw out a ton of them every turn. Alms Collector offers some decent card draw. It's situational card draw, but in white you can't really complain. Really punishes the blue decks too, like if your opponents cast a Brainstorm. They're going to have to settle for just drawing 1 card. We have Arena Rector, which can get us a Planeswalker card when it dies and put it into play, which I think is pretty good. You're going to see another card here soon that's a lot like it. We have Aura Skyclave Hierophant. This is one of the newer cards from Zendikar Rising. My personal favorite Cleric Commander option now. And then last honorable mention is Ravos Soultender. Mentioned it before with Time to the Weaver, but overall, not a bad Cleric. I mean, you could throw it into a variety of decks if you're playing black-white aristocrats. You have a lot of creatures in your graveyard, it's good. Just didn't think it was that powerful on its own. And then number 1, we have just this crazy card, Academy Rector. This is the card I was talking about with Arena Rector. Instead of searching up a Planeswalker after it dies and you exile it, you get an enchantment instead. For the sake of combo decks everywhere, Academy Rector has been just an overwhelmingly powerful card. Yes, it's hard for some people to get because it's reserved list, it's expensive, but it's expensive for a reason. It dies, you get to cheat into play something like an Omniscience, you could cheat into play something like a Necropotence, a Food Chain. I mean, as far as the most competitive decks in the game, or just overall the most powerful decks in casual, I would even argue getting an enchantment like the best one you can get compared to the best Planeswalker you can get is going to help you win more often. I mean, for so many just casual decks, if you cheat into play an Omniscience, is there really much of anything your opponents can do to stop you at that point? If they already allowed Academy Rector to resolve, they probably aren't going to do anything about its trigger. So until we get anything better, I think this is a safe call for number 1. But anyway, guys, this was just my list. Let me know what you think about Clerics. Feel free to list off your own favorites. Void here signing off. You all have a wonderful day.